Jeffrey Epstein asked them to do it. And Jeffrey Epstein, for the past 3 years of their lives has been the best weekend they've ever had, has made them feel alive again in their, mid 50s or 60s. I'm afraid that if I say no to Jeffrey Epstein on this deal, I'm not going to get an invite to the next party. I'm not going to be able to get laid again with a girl that women I find attractive or that, yada, yada. And Epstein hooks those up.
So that was the Joerogan Experience, the podcast built by the guy who spent 20 years telling you he asked the questions nobody else will ask. The guy who will back a guest into a corner over the protein content of a turkey sandwich. That guy sat across from that and gave you yeah, right, and Now I know I've covered Rogan's Epstein deflections on this channel before, but today I want to go through the full catalog, every Epstein guest back to back, because when you watch them in sequence, something becomes impossible to ignore. Joerogan has built the perfect show for powerful people to come on, mention the world's most notorious pedophile, say absolutely nothing, and go home with Joe's blessing and a warm cup of elk broth. 8 guests, 6 years, 1 consistent outcome. The Dunning Krueger Experience. Come for the truth, stay for the vibes, leave having learned nothing about Jeffrey Epstein. We already showed you where it ends. Now let's watch exactly how you get there.
Elon and Trump seem to be in a bit of a spat, Joe. You want to check the tweet that Elon just put out a little bit ago?
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation between Elon and
Have a
Trump.
nice day, DJD. Someone's day gets phone away.
They're going back and forth about different things. And
Yeah.
How does he know? Does he know that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Or does he have access to the Epstein files?
I don't know how he would, but I'm just staying out of the Trump-Elon thing. That's way outside my lane.
What the fuck are they doing?
I know my lane, and that ain't it.
I just don't. I mean, what did you think before you got in office? Did you think that Epstein was murdered?
No.
No suspicion at all of it?
There's just no way that you could have run an op and had people go into that cell and not have any video of it and not have any people come out and say, hey, yeah, I saw that guy. He shouldn't have been there, the guard or this guy. There's just no access points into places like this in the detention center he was in, which I've been in.
That is the FBI director, Kash Patel, the man whose entire brand is, I will drain the swamp, sitting on the Dunning Krueger Experience, being asked a simple yes or no question. Is the President of the United States in the Epstein files? And his answer, on live audio, to 10 million people is, I know my lane. The FBI director knows his lane. The man who runs the agency that investigated Epstein, that held the files, that has the clearances to know exactly what's in them, just told the biggest podcast audience on earth that the swamp has certain lanes he'd rather stay out of. And Joerogan, who once described himself as someone who can't not push back when he thinks someone's wrong, here's the FBI director openly dodge the single most important Epstein question in existence and says absolutely nothing. No, Kash, you are the lane. No, you literally run the FBI if you don't know who does. Not a follow-up, not a raised eyebrow, not even an awkward pause. Just silence. And then the conversation moves on. Now look, people in the comments always give me grief about never giving Joe credit, so I'll say this. Joe sets the question up. He reads Elon's tweet out loud. He puts the question directly on the table. He gives Kash every opportunity. And then the moment Kash shuts the door, Joe holds it open and shows him out. Every single time. Shout out to anyone who's noticed this, because what makes the FBI director comfortable saying, I know my lane, on the biggest podcast in the world, is knowing, from 6 years of watching this show, that there are no follow-up questions, that nobody's coming back, that the mic will just move on. He watched Thiel do it. He watched Baker do it. He watched Elon do it. And he thought, yeah, I can do that. Let me show you exactly how that reputation was built.
And it's so funny to me that it's always comes down to like carnal needs. When you get to like this Bill Gates level and Bill Clinton level, you can't just go pick up gals at the bar.
Yeah,
You know
it's a
what I
little
mean?
tough. Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you're a super famous super freak and, you like chasing skirts, but, you can't do it, like, what do you do?
Well, you do what he did, right? Which is you get somebody to procure for you, which apparently was primarily Maxwell's job. She was clearly operating as his pimp, or whatever the female version of a pimp is.
Curator.
Curator. Yeah, it's a curator. Yeah. The Epstein situation is going to be so disappointing to so many people now because I have this theory that nothing ever gets done in Washington, D.C., right? Investigations go to die there. Nothing ever happens. There's never any real consequences of any nature. And we got all sorts of things happening right now, right? So the Epstein case is just one of them. Regardless of who else is in the files, right? And the Dems, I think, were worried for quite some time and didn't pursue it because, years back they were thinking, okay, Clinton's going to be embarrassed. We don't want that.
Right.
So, again, my point would be just release everything. But yeah, look, everybody's worried now, right? No, at first it was like, okay, again, I go back a handful of years. Nobody was pushing for this, right? Because you got people from all sides probably on whatever that list looks like, whatever that Epstein file looks like, whoever was involved. So it looked like, all right, there's kind of this bizarre bipartisan moment where we're not going to push for this, really. We're not going to make a big effort here. We're not sending anybody from DOJ. The Dems aren't, during the Biden administration, calling for the release of the files. Now, all of a sudden, they smell, blood in the water. Nobody's going to look good from this. But I would caution, just because a name might be in a file, no matter whose it is, doesn't necessarily mean there's nefarious activity. And this person was there. Doesn't mean they're connected to something awful. They weren't f***ing underage girls. Maybe they were if they're in the file, right? But I'm just saying there's a lot of people probably in that file that are going to be named, if it ever comes out, who may or may not have been engaged in illegal activity. But just release the goddamn.
Mike Baker, former CIA operations officer. Joe's most reliable house guest for whenever a story needs a soft landing. The human equivalent of the real issue here is the optics memo. I've said this about Baker before on this channel. The man is genuinely good at his job, not in the intelligence sense, in the talking sense. Watch how efficiently he constructs this. Just because a name might be in a file doesn't necessarily mean there's nefarious activity. Technically correct. Also, the single most useful sentence you could speak into a microphone if your goal is to protect every name on that list, without appearing to protect anyone specific. It's a legal disclaimer dressed up as a reasonable observation. And then Baker really gets going. Because the real failure around the Epstein files? Not a cover-up, not obstruction, not powerful people protecting powerful people. A messaging problem, a self-inflicted wound, like when the PR team sends the newsletter before legal signs off on it. Poor communication strategy has nothing to do with the industrialized abuse of children. Totally fixable if they just hire a better spokesperson.
The Epstein stuff is so crazy because when Kash Patel was on here and he was like, there's nothing. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I didn't even know what to say. My thought was, and people are like, why didn't you push back more? My thought was like, I'm just going to put this out there and let the internet do its work because there's nothing I can. The guy's saying there's no tapes, there's no video. That doesn't make any sense. He didn't know about the Michael Baden stuff, the autopsy stuff, where it showed that he had 3 broken bones in his neck, which never happens. He's like, well, we have a film. We're going to release that film. And the film has a f***ing minute missing from it.
Yeah.
Like, do you think we're babies? Like, what is this?
Also, you got people, including Dan Bongino, right, making bank for a couple of years talking about how awful it is, and we got to get this. And this is a huge conspiracy, and then you release a 2-page memo that says, there's nothing to see here.
Yeah, because you're walking by your bedroom window and you see a little laser, red laser moving across your chest. But how does Pam Bondi say we have thousands of hours, and then Kash Patel says we don't have anything, and then Tim Dillon said he has lunch with J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance says that 10,000 hours is commercial pornography.
Right. Yeah. You think this freak show of Epstein wasn't like, it didn't have hidden cameras or wasn't taped and or whatever?
100%.
I mean, come on. So
100%.
It's funny because with the agency, it's not like the Bureau. The agency, I think most people honestly don't really probably give a shit about the Epstein files. They're more concerned now about this release from Tulsi Gabbard and the talk about, manipulating intelligence, for the 2016 election and Russian collusion and all of that. That speaks more to the agency than the Epstein files. But going back to, I know I'm bouncing around here, but going back to the Epstein thing, I don't understand how they handled this so poorly, right? For Pam Bondi to come out and talk about the files and oh my God, and then like within a blink of an eye, they come out with this bullshit Sunday night memo saying there's nothing to see.
How could there's just a lack of coordination?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do.
that makes sense.
I think it's a messaging problem is always kind of a key element of the Trump administration. I'm just saying a hallmark of a Trump administration is the ability to have a self-inflicted wound, shoot yourself in the foot because of messaging usually. Look, again, I can't speak to, the rumors about him working for one intel agency or another. But I will say, if I'm working for an intel agency and I see something like that, I might find that of interest, right?
Oh, for
and then
sure.
I would definitely go after somebody to see what's going on.
It's the easiest connect the dots puzzle
Right.
of all time.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
rich, powerful people and hot chicks and probably drugs.
Yeah.
And cameras.
Yeah. And,
I genuinely cannot decide if I'm more appalled by what Baker said or by the fact that Joe nodded through all of it. And then, and this is the part that really gets me, Baker winks. He tells you out loud on the podcast that he might currently be working for an intelligence agency, right now, while explaining why the intelligence community shouldn't be held accountable for Epstein. Joe says nothing. But here's the line that tells you everything about this show. Right in the middle of this segment, Joe explains his own policy. On tape, out loud. He tells Baker why he didn't push back when Cash was on before. My thought was like, I'm just going to put this out there and let the internet do its work. He chose not to push back. That was a decision. And his justification is that the internet will sort it out. The same internet that has gone in circles on this for years, because the people who actually have the answers keep showing up on the most listened to podcast on earth and saying nothing. That's not a happy accident. That's the policy. Oh, and Baker calls child sex trafficking statutory rape, like it's a technical classification, a parking violation, the least dramatic item in a story about the serial abuse of children. Joe says nothing. This shit writes itself.
The only thing that makes me personally happy is that Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump just bought an island. That gives...
The Romanian people were really excited.
They're really excited.
Did you see how they were celebrating in the
I
streets?
believe they burned the prime minister's house, or the president, or whoever. They would just start lighting houses on fire. And that's coming, by the way. They just did it in Belfast. That's coming. I'm not calling for it. I'm not saying it's good, but it's coming. People on threads. It's fake. It's fake. It's so obvious. It's fake. X. It's all fake. So the only, and you know what? Again, I'm not calling for it. It's bad, but fire is real. People are going to start realizing that all this technology has just been set up to give you this idea that you have some effect, and all the while, Jared and Ivanka just go buy an island. That's what's happening.
Have you gotten any invites to any bunkers?
No, they're not.
Do you think you'd feel differently if you did?
I don't know. I
know you've had invites to do interesting things.
I've had invites to Teal, and I've said no because I think, he'd probably sit me down and go, listen to me, you fat fuck. You're going to shut your mouth. And I'd sit there and I'd go, absolutely. If somebody said to me, a few people are going to survive, and it's just going to be you and these people, and everybody else is going to die, it's tough. How fun would it be, though? Is it fun? Is it fun if the whole world dies and I'm just sitting and having dinner with J.D. Vance and his wife? I mean, is that with Peter Thiel?
Eating steak?
Yeah, I mean, is that what we want? I don't know.
He got a lot of celebrities to come to his house for parties and things.
Well, I think I think a lot of it was this strange commentary on, I don't know, there was some secret club, secret society you could be part of.
Right,
And
of course.
Again, it wasn't explicit, but that was the vague vibe of the whole thing.
People love those stupid things. They love like exclusive clubs that very few people. Look at the fucking Soho House. Like, look at that stupid thing. I mean, you just go to a place that you have to be a member to go to, and everybody wants to be a member. Oh my God, gotta get it. And then you get like the Malibu Soho House. It's different from the other ones. You have to have membership only there.
I met Epstein a few times as well, and I think
How'd you get introduced?
it was Reid Hoffman in Silicon Valley introduced us in 2014, but it was basically
when you were introduced to him, how was he described to you?
he was described as one of the smartest tax people in the world.
Interesting.
And I probably was my moral weakness that I.
Well, how
like
could
paying
you have known
taxes.
back then? He had never been arrested.
No, this was 2014. It was post arrest.
Oh, so his arrest was the first arrest, right?
Yeah,
Which was like 2000.
07, 08.
Okay.
but I thought he always had good judgment in people.
When the shit went down and Epstein gets arrested for the second time, were you like, oh, well, there you go?
I've thought about it. I thought a lot about it as a result. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Jesus Christ. Well, he tricked a lot of people. I know a lot of people that met that guy.
Watch how fast this goes. Peter Thiel met Jeffrey Epstein in 2014, 6 years after the conviction. The conviction that was public record, that you could Google. That took about 4 seconds to find. 6 years after all of that, Thiel meets the guy through Reid Hoffman and describes him as one of the smartest tax people in the world. Thiel's smart enough to throw himself a little. He calls it probably my moral weakness, a preemptive confession. He even phrases it in first person. Joe talks right over the end of that sentence to let him off the hook. How could you have known back then? 6 years after the conviction, Joerogan's question is, how could you have known? 6 seconds. That is the billionaire package on the Dunning Krueger experience. You fly in, you mention Epstein, and the exit is already prepared for you. Joe's holding the door before you reach for the handle. Nothing required of you. No discomfort, no accountability. In, out. Elk meat. Done.
It's so obvious.
Yes. Like known Epstein clients who are obviously extremely powerful, powerful politically and very wealthy, are Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Reid Hoffman. And some others too, but those three. So, why was Reid Hoffman so intent on destroying Trump?
Yeah, how do you put someone in jail and you don't even name the clients? That sounds kind of insane.
I think, yes, it would. Yes, because
Just stunning that they've been able to hold it back for so long. It's really kind of amazing.
Yes.
Like when people say that people can't keep secrets, what the fuck are you talking about? Look at this.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of these things are not like it's common knowledge, but we don't actually have the proof.
Right.
So the proof is there. I mean, there's lots of videos.
You have to watch out because people are going to try to exploit you. That's the main thing is people recognizing what you are, who have political agendas, will infiltrate your shit and then start blowing out their radioactivity into the world, right? They'll get in there and then all of a sudden you accidentally start exhaling shit that's that you don't agree. I know you don't agree with Ben Shapiro. The problem is where you're kind of in a bit of a bind is that all this human attention has been placed upon you and you have to wrestle with your identity because
That's why I need you to move to Austin.
You don't need me in Austin, my friend.
Come help me.
For whatever reason, people have decided you're one of the magnifying glasses focusing this beam of attention into the world. And so within that is all this room for disaster. It's you know what I mean?
Imagine if it was run by a private company. I'm not saying war should be run by a private company, but imagine if it was.
Yeah.
Imagine if, say, Lockheed Martin ran the war in Afghanistan. Do you think they would have left behind all that f***ing equipment?
Hell no.
Billions of dollars in helicopters
Hell
and
no.
tanks?
Yeah.
But our federal government's just leave it there.
Yeah.
Unless, if you want to be really conspiratorial, you want to arm the Taliban.
Yeah, you're not being conspiratorial. It benefits you because it gives you another reason to get back in there.
Wasn't that what they said about Netanyahu said about Hamas, that he can control the flame?
Yes.
By funding Hamas, he can control the flame?
Yes. We got these two old motherfuckers driving the global bus right off a cliff. That's a crazy concept, is that somehow you can't do anything about it. You apparently there's nothing you could do. You could bitch about it on a podcast. That's not going to do anything. People are just going to be like, you say war good, blow up kids.
There's a lot of people that want to say it's a good thing.
It's embarrassing. You want to feel like you are impervious to grift, impervious to con. Dude, let me tell you something. I have been in a few cults. I get sucked in all the time by shit. I'm not embarrassed to say it. I'm highly susceptible to propaganda.
Me too. I think everybody is. That's why it works. I mean, I don't buy into all of it, obviously, but it's quite a bit.
It's a sunken cost fallacy. The more you invest in something, the more you stick with it because you don't want to lose your investment.
Right. And if they get you young when you don't know what the fuck is going on.
That's right.
Anybody could have got me when I was 20.
That's right. you know, I just feel stupid because, like, you know, before the Trump thing happened, I was pretty black-pilled on politics in general. I felt pretty black-pilled. I did believe it here and there. I was every once in a while, you know, yeah. But then, like, this ridiculous, like, pseudo-nationalist movement happens, and a lot of people got caught by it. No, the other option was up Kamala, you know what I mean? But this, I think right now, all of us are getting for the briefcase Scientology moment right now, which is like, it doesn't matter what mask the person calling themselves the president is wearing. It's always going to be the same thing. They're going to say what they need to say to grab the most voters, and then they're going to keep blowing up people in the Middle East because of oil. And I just, like, I just feel dumb because I really believed it, dude. I believed that we would not do any more Middle Eastern wars. I fell for it. I really bought it, man. And it makes me feel so dumb. Somehow, even though, like, probably, like, when you look at Trump, I don't know if I'm going to believe that dude. But somehow, he did it. Hypnotized. What a powerful magician. No more wars. No more wars. And now, the same bullshit, Joe.
Not just the same bullshit, but like one of the ones that's makes the least amount of sense. Are you really convinced that at this time they're really 2 weeks away from making a nuclear weapon? Like, are we sure?
2 weeks.
But that it's not like we haven't heard that before, right? So at a certain point in time, like, how much pressure does Israel have to put on the president? Like, that's a crazy amount of influence.
They weren't even specifically discussing Epstein. They drifted here from propaganda and cults and Trump, and within 90 seconds, they've produced a completely laundered description of what Ghislaine Maxwell did. She wasn't trafficking children. She was procuring. She wasn't a pimp. She was a curator. Joerogan, who will stop a conversation, dead to correct a guest on the difference between grass-fed and grain-finished beef. Here's curator applied to Ghislaine Maxwell and goes, curator, yes, a curator. Filed, confirmed, moving on. No, I'm not sure that's the right word for someone who went to prison for sex trafficking. No, I think the word we're looking for might be convicted criminal. Nothing, just curator. Yes, a curator. Perfect word, Duncan. Great chat. And look, if this was the only slip, maybe it's sloppy language. Long conversation, things drift. I've said on this channel before that I try to be fair, but we just watched Baker call it statutory rape. We just watched Thiel get the exit in 6 seconds. We're about to watch the main event. The pattern is the story. Every accusation is a confession.
Can we just agree that he was murdered?
I
If you
think
had
that he was murdered.
if you had all your chips on the table,
Yes.
like, Barry, you got to go all in. What are you gonna do?
There are too many coincidences
Yeah.
to make it plausible that Jeffrey Epstein.
No one knows.
No one knows
Well,
that. But what
we don't
people
know.
knew, no, meaning.
Someone must
But
know.
what I was going to say is, like, you know, I've talked to enough people that knew him, met him, went to parties at his house, and said, like, everyone knew this about him. It was like a Harvey Weinstein thing,
Right.
you know, in the sense of the young women,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
or in the sense that everyone knew about Bill Cosby that came into contact with
Yes.
him. Like, there were things that were just agreed to never speak about. You know,
Right.
it's like, it's just absolutely sick. I was when the story broke about him hanging himself, I was obsessed for like a few days, but then I had to move on to other
course,
things. Like,
that's
the
how-
world is a big place.
That's what they're
Jews are
hoping
getting beaten
for.
in the streets. Yeah, but it's also like there actually are things that are more important to me than the
Yes.
story of Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And I hope that there's some investigative journalist digging into the truth of what happened there.
Bari Weiss left the New York Times to do serious independent journalism on her own terms. Founding editor of the Free Press. Extremely serious person who takes serious things very seriously. Was obsessed with Epstein for a few days, then moved on. More important things. I would love to know what those things are, Bari. I'm dying to know what ended up above the most consequential pedophile scandal in living memory on your editorial calendar. What beat that? What beat that for Bari Weiss, independent journalist, obsessed for a few days?
It's just crazy that statutory rape is what took it all down, right? Because it's underage jobs, right? That's what took it all down.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be what took Jeffrey Epstein down.
Kind of crazy.
Even that has a really interesting geopolitical history. There was a similar scandal in the early 2000s with a private military contractor called Dunning Krueger. They got in trouble basically trafficking underage kids to Middle Eastern sheikhs. And I believe the reason that was alleged by Congress that they did that was to juice the deals with them. They need the support of the local high-level officials. They need to be happy. And there's several currencies for that. There's financial payoffs, and there's other things they might like parties and young women. Especially in places where being with the very young female is not illegal. And so I would not be surprised if the Epstein trafficking apparatus started with similar motivations. That it's not necessarily for blackmail, but because it makes clients or customers or VIP people happy. If you're a 70-year-old billionaire, you can't walk into a bar and leave aside the underage thing. You can't walk into a bar, and meet an 18-year-old who's I presume these things are facilitated at private parties, and it needs to for a lot of these guys it has to be discreet. They've got wives, they've got reputations. I worked at a New York law firm, and there's ways that you can make partner. At least this was kind of the vibe that I felt like. Some people make partner because they're really good technically at what they do. There's some people who make partner because they know they brought in one client who's just a really big rainmaker. And there's some people who move up because they open doors to partners while they're associates. They introduce them to someone, and the partners just like being around that person because they get access to that person in a currency that they can't get on their own. And that includes hosting, cool, exotic parties, having, attractive women. Jeffrey Epstein asked them to do it. And Jeffrey Epstein, for the past 3 years of their lives has been the best weekend they've ever had, has made them feel alive again in their, mid-50s or 60s. I'm afraid that if I say no to Jeffrey Epstein on this deal, I'm not going to get an invite to the next party. I'm not going to be able to get laid again with a girl that with women I find attractive or that, yada, yada. And Epstein hooks those up. It's because it's juiced by the girls, the parties, the lifestyle that Epstein allows you to have access to.
But in the public eye, the narrative is underage girls. And this is the thing that makes it so disgusting. When people talk about it, everyone says kids on the island. This is the big conspiracy about it. And this is the reason why people are so outraged about it.
My concern with the runaway train on that, it's a massive manhunt for something that it may be true. To me, it's a needle in the haystack. It might be true. Good luck looking for it. When I think about it logically, with the role that Epstein played between BCCI, Iran-Contra, Latin American politics, African politics, Asian politics, major world foundations, it would seem ludicrous to me that Epstein doesn't mean it's impossible. But logistically, if Epstein ever directly threatened someone proactively and really, really do someone in like that, and word gets around that happens, everything he built goes, the whole Rolodex finds out. And then even if that rumor isn't, even if he didn't, if that rumor existed, people aren't going to want to go to the parties because now that's not like an unfettered good time. That is like, oh, he did this to this guy.
We showed you the ending at the start. You already heard it. The best weekend they've ever had. Barely legal, so to speak. Joe going, yeah, and right, and Now, you've watched Thiel get covered in 6 seconds. You've watched Elon name 3 Democrats and pivot to the Taliban. You've watched Maxwell become a curator. You've watched Baker give child sex trafficking a comm strategy while winking about his intelligence contacts. You've watched Bari Weiss move on to more important things. You've watched the FBI director tell you he knows his lane. And now watch the full 7 minutes, because it hits different when you know what kind of show you're on. Mike Benz's argument, delivered across 7 uninterrupted minutes while the host contributed, yeah, right, and is this. Jeffrey Epstein's operation probably didn't start as a blackmail ring. It started as girls' juice deals, because powerful men can't just chat up attractive women at bars when they're famous. So someone arranges that. Someone curates it, if you will. He compares this specifically to a private military contractor that was trafficking underage girls to secure defense contracts in the Middle East, and explains this makes sense because in some countries, being with the very young female is not illegal. That sentence exists on the Joerogan Experience. Joerogan, who will interrupt a guest mid-sentence to correct them on the branched chain amino acid content of chicken breast, heard being with the very young female and said, yeah. Then Benz tells you that Epstein's parties were the best weekend they've ever had. He means the perpetrators, not the victims. He's talking about the men who attended, and that what made Epstein valuable was making powerful men in their mid-50s and 60s feel alive again. The entire argument, built across 7 uninterrupted minutes with 0 questions from the host, is that powerful men who repeatedly visited a convicted sex offender's private island were basically just lonely guys who stumbled into a great party. The underage element, Ben says most victims were very young, very, very young, but not like 13-year-old girls. Barely legal, so to speak. Barely legal, so to speak. And Joe, who told you his policy is to put it out there and let the internet do its work, eventually describes Epstein's island as cool parties with the hottest girls. Cool parties. This is what zero pushback looks like when it's pointed at something real. This is not a bad episode. This is not an off day. This is 7 minutes of someone systematically stripping the moral weight out of child sex trafficking, euphemism by euphemism, with the host nodding along like he's listening to someone describe a boat trip, a room where nothing has consequences. That's what Joerogan built. That's what he's been maintaining for 6 years. And I need you to understand, this isn't the one exception. You just watched 8 people walk through the same door.
We're all pissed. We're all, we all thought that, all that stuff was going to be released right after the election. We're gonna drain the swamp and find all the and.
Well, the first term was more like that. That's what gave me hope for this term. The first term, there was some draining the swamp going on. I felt, and I don't even know what this is. I don't even know what it is.
Well, it would have been a whole lot different. First of all, if we didn't bomb Iran, I feel like we bombed them the first time. We were good. The second time was like, even the first time I was like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
And the second time when we bombed them, I was like, oh, fucking great. Now, look, I'm no fucking foreign policy expert. I don't know what's going on over there, but I do know that all the people I know that really support Israel above everything else, they're fucking super happy about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but all the people I know that are like America first, or people that are like no new wars, that really thought that we're going to change things, and this is all just for money. We're not going to sacrifice soldiers for fucking money. Those people are all upset.
After 7 minutes of Benz, after the FBI director's lane, after the messaging problem, after the curator, after Bari's incredibly busy schedule, the one person who actually tries to keep going is Cameron Hanes. Not a journalist, not a political commentator, a man who runs ultramarathons through mountains and shoots elk with a bow. Joe's workout partner. And he's sitting there watching Joe dodge, and he goes, simply, genuinely, like a person who wants to know the answer. Did you think Epstein was murdered? Joe shuts it down. The man who gave Mike Benz 7 uninterrupted minutes to explain why child trafficking is really just logistic support for lonely billionaires. That man decides that Cameron Hanes asking a follow-up question is the moment the brakes go on. Cameron Hanes, a man who tracks animals through wilderness for sport, managed to be more journalistically persistent in 30 seconds than Joe was.
I love Sean Ryan, and he has an incredible podcast, but I get why this is happening. He's pretty down, kind of on a lot right now, just with government, with Israel, with Epstein, with all that, which is by design almost. They want us to be hopeless. His podcast lately has taken more, I don't want to say dark because it's more real, but it's like, it's darker than yours. You have every reason to be dark about things, and you are sometimes, but that's not the theme of you.
Well, I think it's like first of all, people that aren't comedians, they're limited in what they can talk about and the way they can talk about things. You know, being a comedian there's a little bit of a safety
little
hatch.
freedom.
You
Yeah.
could always like, what the fuck
It's a
do
joke.
I know?
I'm a comedian.
We're fucking around.
You get a
But
little, get a little. You can write it off a little bit.
there's a layer of conversation that is commonly known as talking shit. And talking shit is a thing that you do where you're with your boys and you say things that you don't really mean because they're funny.
Yeah.
And you make each other laugh. You talk about how many dicks you sucked last night. You know, why is your mouth so sore? You know, like you fuck around. You say things, you're silly.
We showed you the ending at the start. The best weekend they've ever had. Barely legal, so to speak. Yeah, right. And now you've watched every single step that leads there. Deal covered in 6 seconds. Elon naming Democrats and steering to Afghanistan before anyone can follow up. Duncan and Joe turning Maxwell into a curator. Baker giving child sex trafficking a crisis communication strategy while winking about his intelligence contacts. Bari Weiss finding more important things. Kash Patel knowing his lane. Joe shushing his own workout partner for trying to ask a follow-up. I've said this before on this channel and I'm going to keep saying it until something changes. Joerogan is not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. He built 20 years of brand equity on exactly that reputation. He just doesn't ask them anymore. Not when it matters. Not when the guest has money. Not when the guest has access. Not when the answer might close a door he needs to keep open. 8 guests, 6 years, 1 consistent outcome. That's not an accident. That's not a bad episode. That's a policy. And Cameron Haynes, a man who runs ultra marathons for fun, almost blew the whole thing up in 30 seconds. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.